Hi, my name is Sarah Garvey,
I'm Lucy Giorgio.
and today we're here with Father Ken to talk a little bit about care for creation.
So, what are some of the steps that St. Ludmilla is taking to help clean up the environment?
Well, over the past, I've been here for 9 years, and obviously there's been a lot of changes during that time. In 2003, our elementary school closed, and so we did a whole assessment of our property, what was happening here at St. Ludmilla's, and that's why we're sitting in this beautiful building that we're sitting in today. Is we had a team of parishioners that went around and said, what buildings are we using and which ones aren't we using, and are we using them for their original purpose? And so one of the things we decided was the school that we had, we were no longer using for the original purpose. It was very poorly insulated. The windows were all single pane, and we had a boiler that was built in 1953. And so rather than putting a lot of money into an old building, they did an assessment and they said, I think we could do better. And it was very interesting how much money we saved on energy by eliminating the school. The other thing we did is we also, once we built this new building, we also tore down our convent. The convent was built in 1962. It housed the Notre Dame Sisters who started our parish back in 1914. But there too, it was a building that was no longer being used for its original purpose, and it was no longer energy efficient. And so those are easy things. You can look at our financial reports from 2021, 22, compare them to today, and you can see how we've saved a lot of money energy-wise. Well, once we moved into this facility, we now have big dishwashers like you have at Xavier Catholic High School. And so in my previous assignment also, I said, since we have all this industrial strength equipment to do dishes and things of that nature, why are we still using paper plates and paper plastic and all that stuff? And so we have reduced our dumpster fees immensely because we no longer have all that garbage from funeral liturgies, from staff outings, just all those little things. Are we perfect at it? No, but we've drastically reduced the carbon imprint that we have on the world.
So it sounds like the steps that you've taken have not benefited just the environment, but also the parish as it's lowering the fees that you are having to pay.
It is a financial savings to the parish and to the archdiocese, and we have to be wise stewards, not just of the environment, but how are we being wise stewards of everything that God has given not only me, but the parishioners who share their gifts with the parish.
Now, our next question is, if there was one thing that you would want your parishioners to add or get rid of to help get the environment more clean, what would it be?
There's two things I think of. The first thing is, as I mentioned, we're not perfect at doing away with paper plates. And so I would like to continue to remind parishioners that we all have to be a part of this, because there's certain groups that think, well, that's good for everybody else, but we just have 5 people, 5 paper plates aren't going to hurt anything, or 5 styrofoam cups aren't going to hurt anything. But with that attitude, what's the magic number? Is it 5? Is it 10? Is it 15? So just getting everybody to understand that not only can they do it here at the parish, but once they get used to doing it here at the parish, how do they do it in their homes as well? Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I think about this big parking lot that you drove into, and we do have a retention pond now, which I think is a good step. But, how do we continue to make sure the contaminants that we have on the outskirts of our property do not affect our water supply? Because I think our water supply is going to be the next huge issue. I'm kind of getting old and feeble. The two of you are very, very young. And so, what's going to happen in Cedar Rapids in the next 10 years, 20 years? 10 years from now, I could be retired. Mm-hmm. So I'm at that end of life where the two of you are at the very, very other end of life, perhaps starting families, and what type of quality water do you want in Cedar Rapids for your family?
Along with that, on the more spiritual side, what are some habits you would advise your parishioners to form to help be better to the environment?
prayer is always the foundation. Do the words that we say have meaning? You know, when we say God of all creation, do we really mean that? Or when we pray the creed and we say, for all things visible and invisible, you know, do we really stop and think about what that means? Because if prayer is part of that, and if we mean the words that we speak, then that carries over into everything that we do. You know, not only what do we do here at St. Ludmilla Parish, but what do we do in our homes? What do we do in our workplace? You know, how do we carry it over into the other aspects of our lives? So the spiritual component is there, but also to ask ourselves, do we believe in all that's created, visible and invisible? And the creed really came alive to me a long time ago. Back in 1998, before I was a Catholic priest, I had the opportunity to live and study in Israel. And on December 8th of 1998, I went snorkeling in the Red Sea. And if you've ever gone snorkeling, it's pretty cool. But in the Red Sea, it's even more cool because it's all coral reef. And for the first time in my life, you know, I love going to oceans, I love going to rivers, sitting by lakesides, but I've never done the same thing since. Because you can look out over the ocean and you can see the waves and see the seagulls and fish jump out of the water. But there's a whole nother ecosystem underneath there. I like to go biking and hiking. This summer I was biking and hiking in the Black Forest of Germany. Okay, there's so much that I saw and heard, but how much was there that I did not see and did not hear? You know, and as you go along and you kick that dead branch on the ground, okay, how is that changing the ecosystem? You know, and we have to ask ourselves the same thing, you know, when you throw that pop bottle in the ditch, or, you know, you let that napkin go flying, you know, while you're at the football game and you finished your hot dog and it's like, oh, it's just a napkin, it's not a big deal. But how do we change and allow those words to become spiritual, and allowing ourselves to recognize that that spiritual component isn't just the words, but it's our actions as well?
So it sounds like you've had a lot of really unique, like exciting experiences, and you've put a lot of thought into this. So we're just curious, what is like your personal favorite way to ensure the protection of our environment?
So one thing that a lot of people don't realize about me is prior to becoming a Catholic priest, I was a high school ag teacher. And so I was born and raised on a farm. My dad was doing conservation years and years and years before conservation was cool. And so the whole concept of how do we preserve, and my dad always said, yeah, I'm a farmer, but I'm just a steward of this soil so that the next generation has something to farm. You know, and that's always resonated within my head. You know, how do we become stewards so that we leave the world just a little bit better for the next generation?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you